Welcome to the Conversation Lab. I'm Don Schaefer. If democracy begins in conversation, then we need to nurture a culture where ordinary people like us routinely talk about those things that help us understand each other, whether it's about climate, race, religion, gender, or politics. When we're trying to make sense of our city and the world we live in, every question comes with a set of assumptions about the nature of ourselves and our place in a larger world. The Conversation Lab provides a safe place to talk about some of those things. This program is produced by CFRO-FM in Vancouver. It's available on air and online on various platforms, and we appreciate the help of Vancouver's community groups. This is Don Schaefer, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our 75th episode of the Conversation Lab. Our guest today is Tracy Saxby. Tracy's a marine scientist, musician, and award-winning environmental activist. She's also the co-founder and executive director of My Sea to Sky, which is not just a highway in British Columbia. It's also a not-for-profit organization that does great environmental work, particularly in Howe Sound. So, what is My Sea to Sky?
Right. So My Sea to Sky is a people-powered environmental organization that was founded in 2014. We really did start just as a group of concerned citizens in a room. And we are working now, is it 8 years later, to defend, protect, and restore Howe Sound. So we've got 3 different strategic priorities that we're focused on. And we envision a future in which our Catsum and Howe Sound's thriving ecosystems support regenerative communities, is the vision of the organization.
Because there's been so much going on in Howe Sound for so long, do you think that's realistic? Is it possible?
Oh, yeah. Like Howe Sound is one of those good news stories. It's been amazing to watch Howe Sound come back to life. I first moved here in 2001. I came here on a climbing trip with my partner. And the Howe Sound that I remember back then is fundamentally different to the Howe Sound that I am experiencing now, particularly in Squamish. We've seen the herring return. We're seeing the salmon and the sea lions coming back. We've seen whales return to Howe Sound after nearly 100 years of not having whales in Howe Sound. So it is one of those incredible good news stories where lots of dedicated and passionate people have come together to clean up the toxic legacy of past industries. And as a result, the environment is coming back to life. And that is something to celebrate.
That's so great to hear, especially with the fallout from COP26. Thoughts?
There was movement in the right direction, but it's still not enough. I don't think any of the world's governments really, truly understand the urgency of what we need to do to stop climate change. What we're facing is climate, ecosystem, and societal collapse. And if you're looking through that lens, all of the agreements barely scratch the surface of what needs to happen. So it's heartbreaking to think about what the future could look like because our governments have failed to grasp the urgency that is required and they've failed to act. They're failing everybody, everything, all living creatures on this planet right now. One of the reasons that I started the Zero Carbon Challenge is because I recognize that our federal and our provincial governments are failing us. Politicians don't lead, they follow. And so what I'm trying to demonstrate through the Zero Carbon Challenge is that there is grassroots support and there is grassroots momentum for climate action and for real climate action. And that will enable us to not only empower individuals to take action, but to collectively call for the policies that we need to see from the provincial and federal governments, and it will help us to build power so that we can drive real change and call for more urgent climate action from the provincial and federal governments. Just to give you some context on the Zero Carbon Challenge, this isn't my first time being an activist. When I was a naive 29-year-old back in 2007, I proposed that Roseland should be the first plastic bag-free community in all of Canada. And I quit my job And I ended up volunteering for 2.5, 3 years full time, coordinating this campaign. And what was amazing is that this campaign just took off. It kickstarted the grassroots movement across Canada to eliminate single-use plastic shopping bags and single-use plastics. And nobody's going to ever remember that because all of the internet articles and everything, like I've got a stack of media, like newspaper clippings in my cupboard, but nobody remembers that.
Bylaw 2723.
You did your homework.
I did.
Yeah, I was at that meeting and it took a long time to actually get there. So from 2007, this grassroots campaign just took off. And what was amazing about it is that it was really successful. And so I was looking at it and asking myself, like, why was this grassroots campaign so successful? What was it about this idea that really resonated with people? And so looking at greener footprints and everything that I did with that, there's three things or three reasons. One, it empowered individuals. It didn't rely on the provincial or federal governments to save us. It just allowed individuals to make a decision, and a very simple decision, on whether or not to take a shopping plastic bag that day. And you didn't have to be perfect, but you could make that decision every time you went shopping. Two, it framed it as a challenge, which I think resonates really well, particularly within North America and the US and Canada. So there was a friendly competition happening between different communities about who was going to get there first, who was going to eliminate plastic shopping bags first. And three, it brought together very diverse parts of the communities, because not only was it local governments and businesses and schools and community groups, it was everybody working together to eliminate plastic shopping bags. So it got very broad support. And what was amazing is I made a number of mistakes and I burned out. I crashed and burned in 2009. And so even after I had to take a step back from all of this amazing work, the campaign just continued without me. And I think it was that because of those three things, we empowered the individuals to take action. And we also empowered individuals to make their own community plastic bag free. So we had a step-by-step guide for, like, if you want to do this in your hometown, this is how you go ahead and do it. So that's what I'm trying to replicate with the Zero Carbon Challenge. I'm trying to empower individuals and businesses to take action. And I'm working with local governments because I think that local governments is where we can drive real change, simply because our provincial and federal governments lack the leadership or the vision to lead.
Doesn't that speak to the future of community and why it's so important? It's
incredibly important. And I mean, there's the municipal elections that are coming up this year. So we're going to be paying very close attention to those. It's really important for people to understand what their candidates are all about, like what their values are and whether they align with yours. And then to vote to make sure that we elect good people to local government that are going to be able to care for our communities as they continue to grow.
We're speaking with Tracy Saxby, who's the executive director of My Sea to Sky. We're talking about the organization and the work they do. We've talked a little bit about COP26 and how important community is. Can you talk about Howe Sound and what it means for Howe Sound to be a designated UNESCO site?
It's an incredible first step in protecting Howe Sound. And My Sea to Sky is really proud to have been part of that as well. When we first hosted a flotilla on the water, we created a heart out of people that were on stand-up paddle boards and in canoes and in kayaks, and created this short 1-minute video. That was sort of the launch of that campaign to protect Howe Sound, and the launch of the Biosphere Region Initiative at the time as well. So it is incredible to see the work that has been done by the Howe Sound Biosphere Region Initiative. So Ruth Simons has been driving that, and she has done just an incredible job of making that happen. And we're really proud of our role in that, and our role has been to raise public awareness and support for protecting Howe Sound. The biosphere has a number of priorities, And one of the priorities that we're going to be focusing on in the future is climate action. And a lot of the biosphere's priorities are very closely aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals that have been developed by the UN. So the work that we're doing is going to be fulfilling several of those. And that will all sort of fit within the biosphere and what the biosphere is all about.
An obvious question is that Canada has not done a great job meeting those SDGs to date.
No, it hasn't. It really hasn't. There's a lot more work that needs to be done. Climate action is one of the Sustainable Development Goals. We have a new campaign that we're starting. It's called the Zero Carbon Challenge. And our goal is to catalyze climate action within Howe Sound in the next 10 years, to empower businesses and individuals to take action, and to really encourage people to take action in a way that doesn't invite judgment, but it's also to ensure equity and to ensure that it's not just, very, very rich people that are doing this. It needs to be everybody acting together. So that's one piece that we're fulfilling of the Sustainable Development Goals. Things that we're focusing on, it's affordable and clean energy. Decent work and economic growth is surprisingly one of the, as part of climate action, it's just going to improve quality of life and ensure that our economy and the environment that we depend upon is more sustainable. So it is sort of tied to that in an indirect way. Reduced inequalities is part of what we're doing because we're trying to ensure that everybody can take action to minimize greenhouse gas emissions. Sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action. It's all sort of tied together.
So much of my work is about having difficult conversations and trying to navigate such a crazy, polarized world. How do you find a common language where communities want to join together?
Well, this is something that we're struggling with, and there's definitely the psychology of climate change is something that we're trying to grapple with a little bit. I think it's very difficult given social media and how divisive social media has become and how social media has become a tool for misinformation. It's become a tool for the oil and gas industry to share propaganda and misinformation that is confusing a lot of people. And so there's different angles that we're trying to take or trying to understand. And part of it, I think, is finding common ground. So pretty much everybody can agree that we don't want pollution. So that's a potential talking point. Like rather than talking about is climate change real? We know it's real. We don't want to have that conversation anymore. And in many ways, I don't want to waste any more time focusing on the 10% of people that don't think that climate change is real anymore. We don't have time for that. So what we're doing instead is focusing on the people that are with us, focusing on the people that understand that climate change is real. It's urgent. We have 8 years to reduce emissions as quickly as possible and get to zero emissions as quickly as possible, and empowering those people to take action. And part of the way that we're going to be encouraging people to take action is a lot of people don't understand or can't see themselves as part of the solution because climate change is so big. It's so big, and it's really hard for an individual to understand that actually my individual actions can make a difference. But that's only part of the picture as well, because there's a lot of people out there that are saying that, my individual actions are meaningless when you compare it to the oil and gas company that is polluting X amount, and we're allowing them to do that. So there needs to be a combination of individual action and collective action. And that's what we're trying to drive through this campaign.
Can you give us an example?
It's so exciting. I love talking about this. So, for example, one of the tools that we're going to be developing, and we're partnering with BCIT on this, we're partnering with the Community Energy Association. We're going to be putting together a report card to show where are our emissions coming from. In Howe Sound's communities, where are our emissions coming from? Is it from transportation? Is it from our buildings? Is it from our waste? Is it flights? Is it our consumption? Or is it the food we eat? So trying to demonstrate to people where our emissions are coming from, and then giving people very clear step-by-step of like, so this is what you can do to take action. And we're not saying to take action overnight. You don't have to change everything overnight. What we're asking for is for you to commit to one big action in the next 8 years, and to commit to taking that action that's going to have the biggest impact. We can't just change the light bulbs anymore. We can't just recycle. We need to do so much more than that, and to do that in a way that will enable everybody to